The moment you realize you don't belong where you used to fit, there comes a moment in a person's life when something quietly shifts inside of them. It doesn't happen with fireworks, or loud announcements, or dramatic turning points. It happens in silence. You wake up one morning and the world feels slightly different. The same way a familiar room feels strange after you've rearranged the furniture in the dark. Nothing around you has changed. Your friends still talk about the same things. Your family still expects the same version of you. Your community still plays by the same rules. But you are no longer the same participant in this familiar world. This moment can feel both subtle and seismic. You listen to conversations that once entertained you, and they fall flat. You revisit old habits, and they no longer soothe you. You try to engage in the routines that once defined your identity, and something inside resists, like a door refusing to close because the frame has shifted. It's not that you've become distant. It's not that you've become cold. It's simply that your awareness has expanded past the boundaries of your environment. It feels like outgrowing a shell you didn't realize you were living inside. And as soon as you sense that you've outgrown it, you can't fit back into it no matter how hard you try. This is the silent beginning of transformation. And it often feels like a betrayal of everything and everyone who once made you feel at home. But the truth is simpler and more profound. You're not betraying them. You're returning to yourself. The first signs that you've outgrown your world. Transformation rarely announces itself. It whispers, nudges, stirs within you in ways you barely notice at first. The first signs are often small. You might be sitting with friends, listening to a conversation you've heard 100 times, and suddenly feel like an outsider observing a scene instead of participating in it. You might notice that the things that used to excite you now leave you strangely empty, as if their meaning evaporated overnight. There is a gentle disconnection that begins to bloom, a feeling that you're physically present but spiritually elsewhere. At first, this can be confusing. You ask yourself why you feel distant from the people you love, why you've lost interest in the dramas and distractions that once fueled your days, why your mind keeps returning to deeper questions. What am I doing? Why am I here? What do I really want my life to become? This shift is subtle, but its consequences are enormous, because when you begin to see life more clearly, you can no longer unsee it. When you begin to question the patterns you inherited, they no longer feel like truth. When you begin to sense that your life could be something broader, fuller, more authentic, the walls of your old identity start to feel suffocating. It's a transformation similar to a caterpillar building its cocoon without knowing why. There is no instruction manual, no guarantee, no applause, just an instinct, a pull from something deeper than logic. This is the moment you begin to outgrow the world you once belonged to. Not because you are superior, not because you are wiser, but because you are finally listening to the quiet voice that has always been within you. And that voice is asking for expansion, the hidden danger of growing faster than others. Growth feels liberating from the inside, but from the outside, it can look threatening. Human beings are wired to seek familiarity. We find comfort in sameness, repetition, predictability. And for a long time, you were part of that predictable rhythm. You had a place in the social fabric, defined by who you were yesterday. But the moment you change, even slightly, that fabric begins to tear. Others might sense your shift long before you say a word. They notice the way you pause before agreeing, the way you no longer react the same way to their jokes or habits, the way your silence is heavier and more contemplative, and whether they admit it or not. Your transformation makes them uncomfortable, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation. This is the danger of outgrowing your world. People will try to fit you back into the version of yourself that served their comfort, not your evolution. They might say you've changed, and they won't mean it as a compliment. They might accuse you of drifting away. They might insist that you're overthinking, becoming strange, losing your edge, or forgetting where you came from. What they are really saying is, please stop changing, because your change reminds me that I'm not. And this can be painful, because these are people you love, people you once felt connected to, people who helped shape the earlier chapters of your journey. But when you grow, your values shift, your vision sharpens, your priorities expand, and these changes naturally create distance. Not emotional distance out of coldness, but vibrational distance out of evolution. Growth exposes you. It makes you vulnerable, like a lobster shedding its shell. Your old identity falls away before the new one is fully formed. During this fragile period, you stand unprotected, unarmored, and misunderstood. And nothing is more dangerous to the ego of others than someone who refuses to stay the same. Yet this danger is necessary. It forces you to choose, return to the comfort of the old, or continue into the unknown where the new you is waiting. Living between two worlds. Once you begin growing beyond your old reality, you enter a strange in-between space. You are no longer fully part of the world you came from, but you haven't fully arrived in the world that's calling you. It feels like walking with one foot in the external world and one foot in the internal one. In the external world, everything looks the same responsibilities, the same routines, the same people, the same conversations. But internally, everything feels different. You see deeper layers behind the surface. You feel more sensitive to the energy of others. You become aware of patterns that used to go unnoticed. It's as if society is speaking one language, while your soul has begun speaking another. You start noticing how much of modern life is fueled by distraction, how aggressively people chase validation, how desperately they cling to their identities, how loudly they perform their roles, how rarely they stop to question any of it. This duality creates a quiet tension. You try to engage with the world as you once did, but every attempt feels like wearing clothes that no longer fit. You sit in conversations and feel the emptiness beneath them. You look at your own reflection and sense both the familiar and the foreign. You navigate your days feeling like a visitor inside your own life. This in-between stage can be disorienting. You're not lost, but you're not found either. You're dissolving, unfolding, reshaping, and somewhere within that space, you begin to understand something profound. Growth isn't just about becoming more. It's about letting go of everything you were never meant to be. This realization marks the beginning of a deeper journey, a journey that requires solitude, courage, and a willingness to stand at the threshold of your old life while listening to the call of the new one. This is the borderland between who you were and who you are becoming. And although it feels uncomfortable, it is the exact place transformation begins. When family and friends can't follow your growth, one of the most painful truths about inner transformation is this: the people you love the most are often the ones least prepared to understand it. It would be easier if strangers misunderstood you, easier if distant acquaintances noticed your changes and drifted away. But transformation doesn't spare the familiar. It moves straight through the center of your life, touching everything you once relied on, including the people you share your closest history with. At first, the shift is subtle. Family members sense that you've become quieter, more reflective, less reactive. Friends notice that you no longer participate in the same dramas or conversations. People who once understood your every joke now look at you with a faint confusion, as if you're speaking a language they don't quite recognize. They feel this change even if they don't have the words for it. They notice the distance before you do. This is because your transformation doesn't just change you, it changes the role you've always played in their world. Every family system relies on predictable behavior. Every friendship rests on an unspoken agreement: I know who you are, and you know who I am. When one person grows, the balance shifts. People who once liked the old version of you may not like this new one, not because you're worse, but because you're no longer the version that made them comfortable. They may try to pull you back into your old identity. They remind you of who you used to be. They accuse you of being distant, strange, impractical, unrealistic. They insist you're losing your way when in reality, you're finally finding it. You hear sentences like, "You're overthinking. You're not yourself anymore. You've changed." And the irony is painful. They think you've lost yourself, when in truth, you've stopped losing yourself to please them. Some react with fear, some with disappointment, some with subtle resentment, some withdraw quietly because they no longer feel aligned with you. This is not because you've done something wrong. It's because your growth reflects their stagnation. Your questions challenge their assumptions. Your clarity threatens their comfort. Your awakening exposes their denial. You become a mirror they are not ready to look into. And so, the distance grows not dramatic, not intentional, but inevitable. A slow emotional drift, like two boats carried by different currents. This part of the journey hurts. It feels like losing home while still standing inside it. It feels like loving people who no longer know how to love the person you're becoming. But this stage teaches one of the deepest lessons on the path of awakening. You can love people without staying small for them. You can honor your past without living inside it. You can be loyal to others without betraying your own evolution. And sometimes, the most compassionate thing you can do is allow the distance that growth creates. The temptation to hide your true self. When you realize your transformation makes others uncomfortable, a quiet temptation appears. A temptation to shrink yourself, to hide your progress, to play the old role one more time just to avoid conflict. You begin rehearsing old patterns like an actor slipping into outdated lines, laughing at jokes you no longer find funny, agreeing with beliefs you no longer hold, pretending to care about conversations that no longer speak to you. You do this not out of fear, but out of habit, a long-conditioned reflex to keep the peace. But every time you dim your awareness to make someone else comfortable, a small fracture forms inside you. It starts with tiny compromises. A moment of silence where you wanted to speak your truth. A forced smile where you wanted to show discomfort. A nod of agreement where your soul knew better. These fractures accumulate. They build a quiet heaviness in your chest. You feel yourself splitting into two identities. The person you've become and the person others want you to remain. This inner split is exhausting. You carry an emotional weight that no one else sees. You move through the world like someone wearing a mask that grows heavier each day. And gradually, you lose touch with your own center. This is the cost of hiding your growth. Whatever you hide eventually hides you. Pretending becomes a prison. Politeness becomes confinement. Silence becomes self-erasure. The most painful part is that no one asks you directly to betray yourself. It happens in the unspoken pressure of staying familiar. It happens in the subtle fear of losing connection. It happens when you confuse belonging with shrinking. But there is a turning point. A moment when you realize that the mask you're wearing doesn't protect you anymore, it suffocates you. Your soul begins to resist the act of pretending. Your body feels the tension of carrying two truths. Your intuition refuses to let you settle back into the old rhythm. Authenticity becomes the only breath that feels real. You begin to understand that if your presence disturbs someone's comfort, it is not your presence that is the problem. It is their refusal to confront their own limitations. The world needs the real you, not the edited version. Your growth is not a threat. It's an invitation. If others decline it, that is their choice, not your responsibility. The moment you stop hiding, you reclaim your power. You reclaim your voice. You reclaim your alignment. Because the truth is simple, you cannot awaken and pretend to be asleep at the same time. The dark night of the soul. As your old identity crumbles and your new self hasn't fully taken shape yet, you enter a profound and disorienting phase that mystics across centuries have called the dark night of the soul. This stage is not dramatic in an external sense. It is not chaos, crisis, or catastrophe. It is an internal trembling, a quiet collapse of everything familiar. It feels like standing in a place that used to feel like home, and suddenly realizing the walls are made of air. It feels like walking with no clear direction, as if the ground beneath you has dissolved. It feels like you're not who you were yesterday, but also not yet the person you're becoming. During the dark night, loneliness takes on a new meaning. It isn't just the absence of people. It's the absence of the old self. You look for the person you once were, the one who knew what to do, what to believe, what to chase, but that version of you is gone. And the version that will replace it has not yet emerged. This in-between state can be terrifying. You question your choices. You question your intuition. You question whether you've made a mistake by listening to your soul instead of staying with the crowd. You try to return to old patterns for comfort, but they no longer work. You try to reconnect with old relationships, but they feel thin and distant. You try to rely on old certainties, but they crumble the moment you touch them. This is the inner death before rebirth. The dark night strips away everything you falsely identified as you, your roles, your labels, your expectations, your illusions. It feels like loss, but it is actually purification. You're not being punished. You're being emptied. Emptied of the life you outgrew, so you can be filled with the life you are meant to live. The dark night is not a place to escape. It is a passage to walk through. Because in the stillness of this inner darkness, your true self begins to whisper. It whispers clarity. It whispers direction. It whispers truth. You begin to understand that the loneliness is not a sign of going wrong, but a sign of shedding everything that no longer belongs to your journey. And slowly, very slowly, the darkness begins to shift. Not because the world outside changes, but because you start recognizing the light forming within you. This is the moment, the real transformation. The emergence of your authentic self. After the dark night loosens its grip, something begins to surface from beneath the silence. At first, it appears not as clarity, but as a faint sense of inner alignment, a small moment of peace, a breath that feels real, a thought that feels honest. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle shift that reminds you that the night does not last forever. This is where your authentic self begins to emerge. It doesn't arrive as a fully formed version of you. It grows quietly, like a seed pushing through the soil. It grows through small acts of truthfulness, small decisions that honor your inner knowing instead of your past conditioning. You start noticing that your desires feel cleaner, simpler, more grounded. You no longer want the things you chased out of insecurity. You no longer crave validation from people who never understood you. You no longer fight to belong to places that once demanded you shrink. Your choices begin aligning with your deeper values. You choose peace over performance. You choose honesty over convenience. You choose awareness over distraction. And most importantly, you choose yourself sometimes for the first time in your life. The strangest part is that your life on the outside may not look dramatically different, but internally, everything has shifted. You feel a quiet strength that wasn't there before. You feel more rooted, more present, more in harmony with what you know to be true. You realize awakening isn't about becoming something new. It's about remembering what you've always been beneath the noise. Your authentic self is not a final form. It is a returning to your intuition, a returning to your clarity, a returning to the part of you that was always wise enough to grow. And as this authentic self emerges, the world around you begins to reorganize in subtle but profound ways. You start noticing who resonates with your presence and who doesn't. You sense which environments nourish your growth and which ones try to shrink it. You feel the shift inside relationships that once felt predictable. Some people feel more distant, others feel more magnetic, and a few, perhaps very few, feel like they finally see you, not the old you, not the masked you, but the real one. This emergence is quiet, but it is powerful. It signals the beginning of your new life, the discovery of a new tribe. Once you begin living from your authentic self, something unexpected happens. New people start entering your life not by coincidence, but by resonance. You meet individuals who speak the same inner language, even if you've never met them before. You find conversations that flow effortlessly, without performance or pretense. You feel a recognition, a familiarity, almost as if your souls had been waiting for each other. These people do not fear your growth. They do not feel threatened by your clarity. They do not ask you to return to an older version of yourself. Instead, they expand with you. They question with you. They reflect your transformation rather than resist it. This is how true community forms, not through shared backgrounds or shared origins, but through shared consciousness. It forms not through convenience, but through alignment. Your new tribe may not be large. Awakened communities rarely are. Sometimes your new circle contains only a handful of people, or even just one other person who mirrors your depth. But the quality of these connections surpasses the quantity of your previous ones. These are the people who see you without your mask. People who don't require explanations for your silence. People who understand that you outgrew your past, not out of arrogance, but out of sincerity. You realize something profound. You were never meant to walk this path alone. You were simply meant to walk ahead of those who weren't ready. And now, as you move into this new chapter, the companions you meet walk beside you, not behind you, not ahead of you, but with a shared sense of purpose. This new tribe marks the end of isolation and the beginning of resonance. Compassion without shrinking yourself. With this new sense of community comes another challenge, learning how to maintain compassion for others without diminishing your own light. Because the more you awaken, the more you understand that not everyone is meant to grow at the same pace, and not everyone is meant to walk the same path. You begin seeing that people are not resisting growth because they are flawed. They resist because they are afraid. Afraid of what they might lose, afraid of who they might become, afraid of stepping outside the story that once kept them safe. This realization births a gentler form of compassion. You stop judging others for being where they are. You stop expecting them to understand your evolution. You stop trying to convince or convert anyone. But this compassion does not require you to shrink yourself. It does not mean returning to old roles. It does not mean silencing what you've discovered. It simply means understanding without surrendering your truth. There is a middle path here, a path where you honor your journey while respecting theirs, a path where you can love without clinging, a path where you can care without compromising your inner alignment. And as you walk this path, you learn an essential truth. You can outgrow people without abandoning them. You can evolve without condemning anyone who chooses not to. You can continue becoming yourself without needing anyone's approval. Compassion becomes a quiet strength, not a self-sacrifice. When old relationships transform or fall away, as you continue evolving, your old relationships begin to enter a natural process of rebalancing. Some dissolve gently, like leaves falling from a tree in autumn. Others remain, but in a different form. A rare few deepen in ways you never expected. This stage is delicate. It requires honesty from you and acceptance from others. Some people from your past may surprise you. Your growth may inspire them to reflect on their own lives. They may begin asking new questions, seeking deeper meaning, or confronting their own patterns. Your transformation becomes a silent invitation, not a demand, not a lesson, not a lecture, just a presence that awakens curiosity in those who are ready. These relationships evolve into something more truthful, more spacious, more aligned. You begin having deeper conversations, more authentic connections, more mutual respect. It feels like rediscovering someone you thought you had lost. But other relationships naturally fade, not because of conflict, not because of anger, but because the pathways of your lives diverged. Some people can only love the version of you they met, And when you grow beyond that version, their love no longer knows where to land. These endings are not failures. They are completions. You thank them in silence for the role they played. You release them without resentment. You honor the chapter you shared. And you walk forward holding no bitterness, only gratitude. This is the maturity of awakening the ability to let things go gently without forcing anything to stay. The freedom, after shedding your old life. Once the old identities, relationships, and illusions fall away, you begin to experience a freedom that cannot be explained by words alone. It is not the freedom of rebellion, not the freedom of running away, not the freedom of doing whatever you want. It is the freedom of alignment, a freedom that feels like breathing with your whole being, a freedom that comes from living in a way that is true to your inner nature, a freedom rooted in clarity rather than resistance. You stop chasing things that drain you. You stop forcing situations that don't fit. You stop hiding behind roles that once protected you. You feel a stillness inside. Even while the world remains chaotic outside, you feel grounded. Even when nothing is certain, you feel a deeper connection to life itself, not as something to conquer, but as something to participate in consciously. You realize you were never meant to belong to the old world. You were meant to evolve beyond it. The losses you mourned were actually the illusions you outgrew. The people who left made space for those who could walk with you. The identity that dissolved was never your true self to begin with. This freedom is not loud. It is quiet. It is steady. It is unmistakably real. And it marks the beginning of your awakened life. Trust the evolution of your life. If you find yourself in this journey between worlds, between identities, between versions of yourself, know this. You are not lost. You are not failing. You are not alone. You are evolving. You are shedding a life that no longer fits so you can grow into one that finally honors who you are. You are experiencing the natural discomfort of becoming more conscious in a world that fears awareness. You are walking a path that millions before you have walked, even if they didn't have the words for it. This process is not punishment. It is initiation. The caterpillar does not know the wings waiting inside its body. It only knows the darkness of the cocoon. But that darkness is not death. It is transformation preparing to reveal its beauty. Trust your timing. Trust your intuition. Trust the intelligence of your evolution. Because everything you are losing is making space for the person you're meant to become. Everything that is fading is clearing room for who you truly are. Everything that feels uncertain is guiding you toward a deeper, clearer, more authentic existence. You are not becoming someone new. You are remembering someone ancient and true, your real self. And that self is worth every moment of darkness, every step of solitude, every layer of shedding. Your wings are coming.